Hello again, and welcome to another Psalm of the Palm. Today we're in Psalm 95, a powerful psalm with a powerful message. Oh, come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving. Let us shout joyfully to him with psalms. For the Lord is a great God, and a great King above all gods, in whose hands are the depths of the earth. The peaks of the mountains are also his. The sea is his, for it was he who made it, and his hand formed the dry land. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you would hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as at Meribah, as in the day of Massah in the wilderness, when your fathers tested me. They tried me, though they had seen my work, and for 40 years I loathed that generation, and said that they are a people who err in their heart, and they do not know my ways. Therefore I swore in my anger, truly they shall not enter into my rest. It's an amazing psalm because it's almost as if it's two different psalms. It shifts gears toward the middle, but the message that we get through that is a powerful one. He begins saying, let us come, let us worship the Lord. He's the one who's done it all. We are his sheep and the sheep of his pasture, so let's come and worship and bow down and serve him. Because of who he is. But then it says today, if you hear his voice, don't harden your heart. It's interesting that the call is always there to remind us of who God is, what he's done, who we are in relationship to him, his power, his greatness. And yet there's the continual need to remind us that our hearts continually stray. Today, if you hear his voice, don't harden your heart. It's so easy in the midst of all that's going on in our lives to harden our hearts and to stay self-focused and to push everything else out and to forget about God and who he is as well. But he gives the example of what happens when you harden your heart. Think of Israel in the wilderness. It talks about Meribah. God had done amazing things. God had delivered them with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. It wasn't an easy process, but he sent the 10 plagues. He destroyed Pharaoh's army in the Red Sea. He provided for them in the wilderness, and then they complained because they didn't have water. God had done so many other things before. Couldn't he take care of their need for water? Of course he could. But they ended up complaining, which seemed to be a constant theme in the wilderness. And also, if we're honest, tends to be a theme in our hearts as well, doesn't it? But he says, don't harden your hearts like they did in the wilderness. And because of that, they didn't enter his rest. They didn't enter his rest. That's an important concept. Listen, rest doesn't come easy for us in our society and the way we live as it is. We're constantly pursuing it. When I talk about rest, I'm not talking about laziness. I'm just talking about being able to sit back and relax and decompress and unwind. That's impossible because we're constantly being barraged by things. It says, they will never enter his rest. We have a choice. That's basically what this psalm comes down to. You could see God for who he is, and you could respond rightly to this God who has made everything, who is your shepherd, who has made you and formed you and has led you and guided you along, who has shown his great power and strength in creation itself. You can worship this God. Or you can become bittered. You could harden your heart. And you could live a life of restlessness. So many are restless today. So many people of faith, people who put their faith and trust in God, in Jesus, they're restless. Why? Because they're not focusing on who they worship and why. They're allowing themselves to be distracted and hardened by the messages and the things they see and the things they're feeling, rather than being governed by the truth. It's a strong, strong warning, and I pray that we would be challenged by it. Not condemned by it, but challenged by it. It's so easy to harden our hearts. Let's instead return to worship and focus on the God of great power and might who has created us. We're his sheep. Let us worship him. I pray that you would do that today. We'll talk again tomorrow with another Psalm from the Psalms.